Liberty and Imagination. In the year 1644, John Milton published Areopagitica, a speech for the Liberty of Unlicenc'd Printing to the Parliament of England in opposition to the Licensing Act of 1643, which was to censor various written publications throughout England. Within this work, he says the following: "For books are not absolutely dead things, but do contain a potency of life in them, to be as active as that soul whose progeny they are. Nay, they do preserve as in a vial the purest efficacy and extraction of that living intellect that bred them. Who kills a man kills a reasonable creature, God's image, but he who destroys a good book kills reason itself, kills the image of God, as it were, in the eye." We should be wary, therefore, what persecution we raise against the living labours of public men, how we spill that seasoned life of man, preserved and stored up in books, since we see a kind of homicide may be thus committed, sometimes a martyrdom, and, if it extend to the whole impression, a kind of massacre, whereof the execution ends not in the slaying of an elemental life, but strikes at the ethereal and fifth essence, the breath of reason itself, slays an immortality rather than a life. Since therefore the knowledge and survey of vice is in this world so necessary to the constituting of human virtue, and the scanning of error to the confirmation of truth, how can we more safely and with less danger scout into the regions of sin and falsity than by reading all manner of tractates and hearing all manner of reason? And this is the benefit which may be had of books promiscuously read. This work is a paradigm for the principle of free speech and freedom of expression, freedom of conscience. It is a rousing defense of liberty as the basis of a just society. And what follows is an elaboration on this this work by Milton, by Northrop Frye in his Fearful Symmetry. Frye comments the following: "The greatness of Areopagitica is that it speaks for liberty, not tolerance. It is not a plea of the nervous intellectual who hopes that a brutal majority will at least leave him alone, but a demand for the release of creative power and a vision of an imaginative culture in which the genius is not an intellectual so much as a prophet and a seer. The release of creative genius is the only social problem that matters, for such a release is not the granting of extra privileges to a small class, but the unbinding of a Titan in man who will soon begin to tear down the sun and moon and enter paradise. The creative impulse in man is God in man. The work of art, or the good book, is an image of God, and to kill it is to put out the perceiving eye of God. Here we see a direct connection between liberty and imagination. This theme I touched on in a previous presentation. This great Renaissance humanist culture, which blended with certain streams of occult philosophy, Kabbalah and alchemy, place the imagination, the human imagination, at the center of the cosmic story in some ways, because the imagination, the liberty of imagination, is a kind of perception of the eternal. It is a seeing subspecie eternitatis, through the eye of eternity. This is what great works of imagination accomplish. They move us up above the temporal and decaying order of death and becoming to the meadows of truth of which Plato spoke. Blake, in this spirit, writes that nations are destroyed or flourish in proportion as their poetry, painting, and music are destroyed or flourish. The primeval state of man was wisdom, art, and science. And from Proverbs, where there is no vision, the people perish. To open the eternal worlds, to open the immortal eyes of man inwards into the worlds of thought, into eternity, ever expanding in the bosom of God, the human imagination. O Saviour, pour upon me thy spirit of meekness and love. Annihilate the selfhood in me. Be thou all my life. This a prayer to genius. I see the fourfold man, the humanity in deadly sleep, and its fallen emanation, the spectre and its cruel shadow. I see the past, present, and future existing all at once before me. O divine spirit, sustain me on thy wings, that I may awake Albion from his long and cold repose. Sleep. Lack of energy, a dearth of energy, an unconsciousness, a cold repose. This image of the imagination dead, really, the deadened imagination. I think of the fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty. And I think there are some Jungian comments on this. I can't elaborate much further than that, but there's a way of reading the story of Sleeping Beauty as a myth concerning the awakening of the unconscious. And Jung associates the unconscious with the imagination. There is an awakening of imagination which comes for instance, in the contact with the anima and animus in Jung. But this sleep, this long, cold repose and Albion, a giant, a titan, a titanic energy, an energy and power so immense, so immeasurable, so gigantic, we can scarcely imagine. And this is a dormant power within us. This is dormant sleeping within us. There is a spell upon us such that the imagination is dormant, say. And the prophetic role of Blake, of Milton, and as they saw it, the Hebrew prophets, the Hellenic poets, the great seers, druids, storytellers of old, was to rouse us from this sleep, to awaken us in our innermost core, to rouse the imagination from its slumber. I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. I will not reason and compare. My business is to create. Thank you for listening. I wanted to continue on this theme of imagination, the centrality of imagination in human life and in human culture more generally. The role it plays individually for you and I, and for the broader shape of culture and this moment in culture and in history, in the sweep of history too. The role it plays in the great scheme, the great cosmic scheme of things. That what is now proved was once imagined, and that it is important for the imagination to be awoken from its slumber. And I think Blake and Milton are great friends to us in helping remind us of this. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to support the channel, I have a Patreon link in the description of the channel. And I would love to hear any of your comments or thoughts or questions about this presentation down below in the comments section. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Stay tuned. I'm going to be sharing more content soon. Thank you.